Thought a bit. I thought a lot about what I was going to do with this, and I had a couple different ideas, and started one way, and it changed to another, and to another. And so I wanted to talk kind of about. I guess most of you who know me know my history with Chihuly a long time ago. I'm blowing from 40 years, and I've done a lot of different things, a lot of different jobs, and a lot of different careers, I guess you could say. And so part of what I've been doing for a long, long time is photography. And this image that's here is something that I've dealt with for a long time with parts of my work. Is it's photographing details and close-ups and patterns and color and forms, and using my glass work as the subject matter and not to get to this object. The image. There's only one image in this show, but there's images in this slideshow that are inspirational and that are leading me in a direction. So next. So next. So this is Fergus a year ago. Next. This is Fergus now. And he is a really big part of my life. Not quite as big as part as Margarita, but he's in there. Next. So this is, again, that image that I took. This is the next. That is the interior of this piece that I took in the sunlight with my iPhone. Next. And I was just, I walked out of the studio with this really sharp opening close to my eye and looking around in the sunlight, and I said, whoa. So I took a bunch of pictures of it, and it was just turned into this nebula thing. And I've got other photographs of interiors of the pieces with a connection that are very organic, very otherworldly. Next. And I've been dealing with this connection, like sticking your fingers on either side into a balloon and touching your fingers together. I've been dealing with that for as long as I've been working with glass, and it's come out in different series. And sometimes the simplest ones work out really well, and they keep getting thicker and thicker. Next. And again, I do all the photography of my work, and I learned a long time ago from a couple masters on how to shoot. But I like the form and the color gradations. Next. And this one I had done a while ago, and it just sat in the closet and in storage for a long time, and I've hung it up on monofilament and photographed it, and decided that I needed to stand up instead of laying down on plexiglass like it has been for a long time. Next. And so I made the stand for it. And one of the things I really liked about the show was the plexiglass base and the stand that I made, and putting it on a mirror and having this reflection on the wall added another dimension to the piece. Next. So here's another one from similar but a different series, but again, this one dealing with the optic mold and the patterns that happen because of it, and this related to other series that I've worked on dealing with patterns. Next. So then I made this base for it, and I used my furnace for the heat to forge the plexiglass and bend it on an armature, and the support was hand formed with a hard plexiglass. It was really a lot of fun. Next. But I love this, the interior forms with these were essentially the most important part to me. Next. And I had to find, I'm really happy with the way that I found to be able to show that off and to have it be kind of floating. Next. This is a series dealing with different colors, complementaries, and with this one opposites, interior and exterior, in a fairly simple form. Next. And this is the east wall of the show. And I'm just really, really happy with the way that it all worked out. The combination of Nancy's work and my work together, I think it's the best show that I've ever done. Next. This is the leading trio there, Huey, Dewey, and Stan. Next. These guys, I actually forget when I actually made these. And they were sitting in storage for a long time, maybe 6 years. And I finally found them and brought them out and finished them. Next. 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 So originally it was Huey, Dewey, and Louie, but this just reminded me of Stan Laurel for some reason. So it's Huey, Dewey, and Stan. Next. And then I did have these rondelles from the Lamage series that I wanted to have something in the front in the windows. So we put these in. Next. And again, these are dealing with pattern, repeating patterns in color and form. Not so much the form, but the patterns. And I find that it's the repeating pattern is prevalent in what I do. Next. And this pattern in the sky, I just get mesmerized by what I see around me. Next. And then sometimes they translate into these patterns in the optic mold, and that's an old 600-year-old Venetian technique. This was part of the Peacock series. Originally I was going to put this in the show, but I forgot it when I was bringing work to put in the show. Just spaced. And anyway, I just love the patterns in the glass that come from the optic mold. Next. And so it comes into color, and the colors and the patterns that I see around me. Next. That this is a drinking glass, actually. Again, with the optic mold. Next. So I'm used to carry a camera a lot of time. Now I have it in my phone, and I just take pictures all the time. Next. This is one of the pieces in the show. Again, it's with the color and the patterns, and sculpting hot with my hand, with a pad of wet newspaper in my hand, between my hand and the glass, to get these forms. Next. This just somehow just reminds me of some of the pieces with its interior connection and the color gradations. Next. And I see these as these flowers, mostly flowers. I've seen it next in animals and sea slugs, and there's a caterpillar in here. We'll see that the color combinations that I just wouldn't think about. And I next, and I love these color combinations and the repeating patterns. Next. Saw these when I was out walking Fergus. Next. And then there's some non-repeating patterns. Oh my God. This little dog is so much fun. Next. 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 This is that caterpillar I was telling you about. It turns into this amazing moth. But it was long. It was about 2 inches long. And it was on the tomato plant in the backyard. All of a sudden one day, there were 4 of them. And then the next day they were gone. Next. Next. So I'm looking at these flowers especially as color studies for future reference, for future works. Next. And it's just still trying to figure out how to use the colors and how to deal with them. Next. Next. Yeah. Next. 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 Love this one. Next. Next. So I'd make lamps also and lighting fixtures, but this was a piece that was an experimental one in working with color in the optic mold. Next. And again with the patterns, pattern on the ceiling, the pattern in the glass, and the color. Next. I get used to these because they're hanging in the house and I see them every day and I forget how much I like them. Next. Oh, these color combinations, just wonderful. Next. And this is early morning arriving back at the FedEx terminal. And I couldn't resist the sky. So normally when I get back in the morning, it's 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and it's dark. Sometimes it's at sunrise like this. So I have a new career now. I'm a line haul driver for FedEx Freight, and I drive at night, and allows me to do my sculpture now on the weekends. And allows me to focus on my sculpture and not have to deal with my product line that I was doing for 20 years. Next. Again, these repeating patterns, but these repeating patterns are happy guys laying in a tray. And the happy guy is, it's just a little guy praising God like this, with his hands up in the air, with a head and a belly. And it started out as a lesson in glass blowing on glass, like I usually call it glass blowing 102, where it's gathering the glass on a steel rod and then rolling it on the marvering table and then going to the bench and using the jacks to cut in the head and make the head, and then the tweezers to pull out the arms, and being precise. And it'd take about a minute and a half to make. And so that they get to practice gathering every minute and a half or 2 minutes, and doing each step in the process every minute and a half. And glass blowing is a ballet, in that it's the choreography between timing and temperature. And in ballet and dance, you can't dance if you're watching your feet. If you're learning how to dance, you only can dance once your body knows how to do it and your body can remember it. And that's what this project was, what this class was about making lots of these little happy guys for practice and body memory and muscle memory, and just practice, because it's a skill, and it's you need practice to develop skills. Next. This is the interior of that clear piece earlier on in the show, with a connection right in the middle, and the oval for the interior, to get into the interior, and the oval and the exterior. And in between is this inch-thick glass. And I find that inch-thick glass, and looking into the glass, and that realm inside the glass, is totally fascinating. I find the forms that happen, and the color, and this space, this place where you can't get, because it's in the glass. And I love blowing glass, and I hate cutting, grinding, and polishing. And so this is a true yin yang. It's a balance of plus and minus, of love and hate, to make these pieces. And when I started making them, I was compelled to continue on with this series, and they kept getting thicker and thicker, and it was really frustrating on one part, because I just really don't like cutting, grinding, and polishing, but I can't get around it. I have to do that in order to get this. And they're really satisfying when they're done, because there's nothing else like them in the world. It is not, I've never seen anything like this before. And they're very, very difficult to blow, because they're so heavy, and the blowpipe that I use is 1.25 inches in diameter, and even that, it's almost too small, because I need it's hard to grip, to turn and deal with centrifugal force and gravity, and the gravity always wants to make the glass to droop, because in order to change it and blow the piece, it has to be hot and soft, and the gravity makes it droop, and you keep it from drooping by turning it. But if it's so heavy you can't turn it, it's just, I make 2, maybe 3 of these at a time, and I have to stop, and I can't even open the door, because I don't have no grip anymore. But I find these things fascinating and really satisfying when they're done. So I go through the pain, I guess, of making them, so I can get to this. Next. I think this is the last shot, but this is the direction where I'm headed. This is the series that I'm going to be working on for a while now, and I'm going to focus on this series with this fairly simple form with a connection, and this really, I still find this interior really interesting. But they'll be thicker and thinner, and they'll be like, this didn't work out as well as I did. What I had in my mind was, I wanted it to be bright lemon yellow on the interior and black on the exterior, and like a bumblebee, and just really bright. And I think I have an idea of how I can do that, so that the black doesn't bleed into the yellow, and the yellow doesn't bleed into the black. But that's like a color theory experiment. but I want to work with opposite colors, interior and exterior, and complementary colors, interior and exterior, and also dealing with the colors in those flowers from before. That I think it would be a really, some of them I think would be really pretty, and some would be really, really interesting. But I think that this is where I'm headed. And I think that's what I wanted to say.
That's great. Thank you, Dan. I'm going to let me just open the chat on the side here so that I can see it. And I'll leave the slides up so that we can always go back if we need to something. Let's see. We have a bunch of questions in the chat already. So Nancy Gosher Thomas asks, can you explain what the optic mold is for people who aren't familiar with that?
Okay, the optic mold is it looks like a sugar cone standing on its tip with its rim up in the air, made out of aluminum, and it's the one that I have is about a foot tall, and the opening at the top is about 6 inches in diameter, and the bottom towards the point is maybe 1.5 inches in diameter. So it's a cone, but it has these ribs on the interior of the cone. And I make the glass piece about the paraffin about the same shape as that, get it really hot, and stuff it into the mold, and then blow into it while I'm stuffing into the mold. I blow really hard. Sometimes I use compressed air, sometimes I just blow really hard. And then when I pull the glass piece out of the mold, it looks like a gear, looks like a cone-shaped gear with teeth and valleys. And if you then reheat the piece a little bit and then go back to the bench and blow it, but cool the teeth get stiffer because they get cooler. And the valleys are still hot, so they blow out thinner. And so you can twist it and you can blow it straight. It's like that piece that was in the interior of the reddish one, and earlier on that was the interior of a drinking glass, or the big rondelle. Those ribs were cooled and then it was blown, and so the glass is thicker at the tooth and thinner in the valley and thicker at the tooth, and so you have this optical effect that happens with the glass because of the varying thickness of the glass because of the optic mold.
That's great. Thank you. Then Kathy said, I love the caterpillar. Nice work, Dan. Nature is a great motivator for inspiring creative minds like yours. So just a nice comment from Kathy. And then Nancy Gosher Thomas, another question from Nancy, said, with the more intricate patterns, do you do any sketching prior to blowing the glass?
Usually I don't. Usually I see it in my mind. I have a really vivid color visual imagination, really, really precise sometimes. When I was in high school and when I went to junior college, I wanted to be an engineer. I really wanted to transfer to MIT and be a mechanical engineer and a yacht designer. And I used to do a lot of mechanical drawings with T-square and a drafting pens, and I did a lot of drafting and architectural drafting. And so all the things that a lot of the things that I make ancillary to the glass, like the furnace that I designed and built, and the annealing oven that the pieces go into when they're finished and they cool down, or they anneal and then cool down. I designed those on paper with a T-square, accurate with a very accurate scale, and then took the dimensions directly off the drawings to make the pieces, to make the devices. Same thing with the boats that I had designed, although the little boats that I designed, I made models and then lofted from the models. But normally with glass and the forms that I make, I see them, and they evolve the design iterations and the changes, like the generations, I guess you could say, of the forms happen in my mind, in my third eye, and I see them change, and I can change colors back and forth, and I can evolve a shape from one thing to another in my mind to get to the final one, and that's the perfect piece that I strive for. And maybe in 40 years of blowing glass, I have 36 perfect pieces. Not many at all. Some are very small, some are big, but they're really, really rare to get a perfect piece. Come here, come here, come here, come here, Fergus.
Fergus is going to make an appearance in this
Playing with. Pick up.
In real life.
No, he's not.
How often do pieces get broken, either when you're blowing or when you're doing the after work? How often does that happen? Does that happen a lot, or have you gotten it down to sort of a science where that you don't break things very often?
Broke a lot in the beginning. Dropped a lot of pieces on the floor in the beginning with the timing and the ballet of the transfer from the blowpipe to the punty rod. There was, I guess I could say, years of when I was doing my production line and making pieces for stores and galleries, and doing my wholesale stuff, and that I didn't break a thing. They weren't all perfect. They didn't all, because they were loose and spinning out and then hanging them down. It was like dancing with the glass. I blow a votive or a blow, I was making a little bowl and blow a bubble and then put a foot on it and punty it, and it would be like a brandy snifter shape, and then I give it the spin cycle with the final reheat, and then open it out into a rondelle, and then hold it down and twist it. And it's like a woman in a dress dancing, and then stopping and spinning, and the dress goes out and then comes back down again, goes out and comes back down. That's what happens with the glass. And I get these really loose forms, and that people say they look like chihulies, because a lot of that technique, those old Italian techniques, again, come from working on Dale's work and those C forms a long time ago. But the breakage in the grinding and polishing doesn't happen very often, but when it happens, it's usually towards the end of the process. And I had one piece that I was working on, and it was finished except for the final polish, very final polish. Maybe I projected maybe 10 minutes more polishing, and I just turned the angle just a little bit too much, and it's on a felt wheel with cerium oxide, and it caught into the felt wheel and just sort of wham against the wall and smashed against the wall. Just got ripped out of my hand and put a big dig in the felt wheel and smashed against the wall. And I just wanted to scream.
Yeah, I cannot imagine that. That would not make me happy.
I mean, that's when a piece falls off the punty or something happens in the blowing process, it's part of the blowing process. And it's so I've come to also slowly accept that the grinding and polishing process is still part of the blowing process. Mm-hmm. So it's not really done until I can use it.
Margarita had a question. Margarita said, explain how sometimes the glass can expose your inner emotions, especially in the sculptural work, like when you and Margarita first met.
Oh, wow. So I was making chlamysaurs back then. And a chlamysaur has this connection in the middle. And it has the decorative technique of the two of the pieces against the wall that have the dots on the side. and kind of similar to the big rondelle with the spiral. That all that decorative technique, all that stuff that I was using on Dale's work on the C forms, this old Italian techniques that we were using and evolving, and I just really liked the look of that. So that there was the pieces were pink on the interior, and one of them was green on the exterior with this really beautiful decorative technique on it. And when we met, God, I can't remember exactly what you said, but the especially the interiors and the pieces that I was doing were where I was emotionally at the time. Some were really dark, some were really light, some were bright, some were loose, but it was very much emotional, because when I started the clams, I knew the colors, I knew the process, I knew what it was going to look like, but I didn't know what it was going to look like, because I was going to go with the flow, and I always went with the flow. And one time I was making a clam with Margaret's son Stephen, and it started coming out wrong, and the whole concept of it coming out wrong was a wrong thing to say, because it's all about going with the flow. But anyway, the bubbles started going out to the side, and I had to redo it and start again. And there were difficulties with the piece, and a couple of different difficulties with the piece. And Margaret came into the studio, we were almost done with it. And it seemed like when this piece was finished, that it had spirits in it, there was some kind of life happening inside the piece. And it's like, in a way, like the nebula, and taking a photograph of the inside of that piece. It was something else going on inside there. So I think that, and I know what she was talking about, was that she looked at my work and looked at these clamosaurs, and she told me where I was emotionally when I made them. And she was right. And that's probably why we're together.
There's a psychic element to this.
That's
yeah, impressive.
Definitely so, because she's an artist as well. So
Nancy Gosher Thomas asked if I could. I'm gonna go back to some of the earlier pieces. And if anyone has any other questions that you'd like to put in the chat, please feel free, and I'll be happy to ask them for you. But Nancy asked if I would go up to the start of the presentation, and so that we could have some of these on the screen while we're talking. So when was the first time you made glass, Dan? How old were you, and when did it all start for you?
It started in February 1977, when I was 27, I think it was. And no, 26. Hey, Fergus. I was at Rhode Island Junior College, and spending all my time in the art department, in the ceramics department. I was learning how to be a potter, and I was getting pretty good at throwing pots on a wheel. And one of the students there had a boyfriend who was a grad student at RISD in ceramics. So, and his name was Tom Schumacher. And I went to see him a few times. And one time I went to see him, he wasn't there. So I went upstairs to look around in other studios, and I stuck my head in the glass shop. And I met Flora Mace. And she was working with Michael Glossop. And she let me watch. She was making a little cylinder in glass. And she let me watch. And when it was time to go, I was, I don't know, there for a couple of hours. And when it was time to go, she said, if you want to learn some more, come back on Thursday at 9 o'clock. And I did. And she was working on her work because she had an arrangement with Dale at the time to do some work for him in exchange for blowing time. And so she had this slot to blow, and I became her assistant. And then I started going at night because that's when she had time available. And we were doing stuff for Dale, transforming rods of colored glass into bundles of threads, and heat up a chunk of colored glass, and then go into the hallway and grab it with a pair of tweezers, and one person would hold the glass, the other one would walk down the hallway or sometimes run down the hallway with us and turn and create threads and just draw it into a thread. And so we transformed rods of color into bundles of threads so that Dale could do his blanket cylinders and Navajo blanket cylinders on the weekends. And 2 weeks after I met Flora, she introduced me to Dale, and started working with him. And he started teaching me, and I became his assistant. And I was like an administrative assistant and logistical coordinator and hot shop assistant and gaffer from 77 to 89. Last time I worked with him was at RISD with Lino Tagliapietra as the gaffer. And we worked for 5 days, and the last day we made 8 pieces, and each one of them was a museum piece. We were doing Venetian series with these large shapes, like simple shapes with curly cues of glass wrapped around them, amongst other things. And they were just very bizarre pieces, but they were coming out of Dale's mind onto paper like water out of a faucet, and they continue to come. He's the smartest man I've ever met, and he's a genius, and he can do things with color that rival what God does.
Have you ever, in any of the work that you're making now, do you use an assistant?
Oh, yes, everything that has the optic mold with body wraps and dots and all that kind of stuff, like the Peacock series, like the big rondelle. Yes, I can't do those alone. I have to have an assistant. And I did a series of peacocks that were footed pieces that have like a platter with a hollow foot. It's complete separate blown piece that's a rim attached to the bottom of a bubble, and then punted inside the foot. And those were the most complex pieces I ever made. And that was entailed 2 assistants that were as good as me to make.
And are these people that you know from years ago, or do you ever work with younger people, or how do you decide? Because it seems like that's such an important part of it. How do you figure out if someone would be a good partner in making something like this?
From just experience and making other smaller pieces here and there, or watching them work with someone else and having conversations. But watching someone do their work, I can tell whether they have the hands for it, or they have the sensibility for what I do. And then it's a matter of practice, of working together and making some pieces and trying it out and overcoming the problems in the choreography from one piece to the next, and having a little debrief after each piece, and to know to come a little hotter, a little sooner, and the piece that they're bringing, the color, the bit color, a little different shape or a little different temperature. And then getting to when everything, I think Eric Pinson, I've worked with him for the most number of years. And the many times when we'd work, we'd go through a whole session, not talk to each other at all. And I just look at him and give him a nod. It's kind of like the way that when I used to sail with my father when I was the mate on the Belisarius, and he was a captain, and we'd come into anchor, and we couldn't talk to each other because we're 56 feet apart from each other, and we just look at each other and know when, and he'd give me a nod, and I'd know what to do and know when to initiate what my job was. And it's like that with most all of the master glass blowers that I've seen, is that their assistants and their choreography is so finely tuned that they don't have to say anything. They just know what to do when, and just like the conductor with his baton saying, do it now.
Can you talk a little bit about the collaborative pieces that you did with Nancy and what that process was like of working with someone who's not a glass blower?
Sure. I had this idea that when we started to think about showing together, that I wanted to have her come into the studio, because glass is infectious and I love it. And she's never done it. She had never done anything with it before at all. And I thought that, I mean, it could be a worthwhile experience for her. It could be a lot of fun for me. And it would be interesting to see what could happen. And go to the slide of the gallery shot of the east wall. There's a piece in there as one of the portraits. This one up on the top in the middle. Not that one to the right. Above there's two, one above that top one right there. That image I think I saw somewhere along the line at your studio, Nancy, or somewhere. But I had that image in mind, of having that image on an oval piece of glass. And I wanted to translate that onto glass. And so she does that with charcoal, and you can't use charcoal with glass. You can use powdered glass, but powdered glass doesn't react or work anything like charcoal does. It doesn't react or work like anything that she's ever had any experience with. And so we tried a few different times. We should come over on a Sunday, and we worked for 2 or 3 hours. And so we were limited in our time that we had together. But I really wanted to try to make it work. So we tried a few different things, and did different techniques of picking up of making the image and then picking up an image. And then we decided to forget a portrait and to try to do something abstract. And we did some things in gray and black that didn't get shown. And I think that's when I somehow I saw this abstract that you had, and so I thought that, Nancy, and I thought that maybe we should try to key off of that. And we ended up using frit, which is like Jimmy's on an ice cream cone, in different colors to make the pieces that we collaborated on. And I guess, I don't know if it's ironic or whatever, but the only pieces of glass that sold at the show were those pieces that we made together. But I was really happy with the process. She did the design of the color coordination. Come here. And come here, pick up. And I did the blowing, and originally I was going to have the rims be different, but I just decided to go with the flow and make them as they are with this oval rim. And it was a thoroughly rewarding experience to work with her in the studio and try to teach her about glass in a really confined way.
That's great. With these pieces that have the molded stands, have you made stands for work before, or is this your first time doing that, or what was that process like?
Well, the one, go up. Keep going. The piece with the photograph, that's on that one. That stand right there, that's forged in the furnace. So I use the heat in the furnace to forge this piece. It's a piece of like 3/8 steel rod I heated up in the furnace and smashed it flat, and then with a chisel, heating and smashing and heating, and then I split it in half using blacksmithing techniques that I saw at um, God, I can't remember the name of the place now. At Haystack, because the forging and the glass studio were in the same building, and so I got a chance to watch Francis Whitaker, a master blacksmith, make some pieces, and he treated the metal exactly the same way as I treat the glass, hot and fast. And then once it cools down too much, you can't manipulate it, heat it up again, get it really hot. And so the temperature that he was going back in to reheat his metal into the forge, into the it was a temperature that most students were taking it out to start to work at it. Whereas like me, when it's too cold to work, I'm going back into the furnace. It's a beginning glass blower that's way too hot. He's taking it out. But I've made other bases using this process, with exotic wooden bases. This one has an ebony base, solid ebony. And it kind of reminds me of a museum stand in a way, but the ones below the go down on the sun to the one you had on the wall, like these, like that, and the other ones. I didn't want to. The metal was too hard. It was too cold, like I thought, and it was too prevalent, especially with this one. This is one of my favorite pieces in the show. It may be my favorite piece in the show, other than the photograph. It's just really delicate. It reminds the perimeter and the cut part and the polished edge. It reminds me of a circuit diagram for a racing circuit. I'm a Formula One fan, and one of my favorite circuits is Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium. And I'd look at the map of all the circuits for the year for the Formula One season, and each one of them has this kind of a perimeter, has this narrow band and this reminded me of this. And so I even forgot what the name of this is, but the names of these pieces are from corners from Spa-Francorchamps. Anyway, I wanted it to be really lightweight visually, and so I had experience a long time ago working with plastic and heating it and shaping it, and I knew I could do it. So from that experience back in high school, and I knew that I should have a clear plexiglass base and a clear rod coming up, and somehow have the rod go into the opening on the outside of the connection, and somehow have this little cup to support it. I thought would seem the way to go. So that's what I did. And so I used the furnace actually when it was really on a low idle at 1500 degrees as the heat source for forging this plexiglass around the rod around a jig that I made, and an adjustable jig. So because each post is different for each individual piece. And then the cup that holds the really supports the weight of and the balance of the piece is just a piece of flat plexiglass that I heated up with a pair of holding it with a pair of tweezers, and in and out really fast into the heat, so that it wouldn't catch on fire. Because if you leave it in too long, it catches on fire, and then right on the corners, and I was able with heavy leather gloves to actually shape it against the glass. And it's the kind of thing where, well, it's not done until they can present it, right? So the piece was still even though it was finished, as far as the grinding and polishing, the presentation wasn't finished yet. So I had to take the chance and put this hot plexiglass against the glass and push it against the glass and form it to the glass, because it's the only way I could get that shape. And I had the hope that it wasn't too hot, that it wouldn't crack the glass. And it didn't crack the glass, because the heat shock couldn't crack the glass if it's too hot or too cold. And I'm really proud. I'm really proud of the bases and the whole presentation on these 4 pieces against the wall.
Yeah, they're great. That's great. Really fascinating, Dan. Thank you. So we're nearing the end of our hour here. Does anyone else have any other questions you'd like to ask before we go, or I'll ask the last question? If anybody else has a question, so going once, going twice, you can put it in the chat. That's okay. I'll ask the last question then. So you talked about this piece at the very. I'll go down to this last piece so that people can see the things that you're working on now. So can you talk a little bit about what you have going forward and what you see this series becoming?
At the moment, I see it as right at this moment, I see it as kind of multiples of this shape, but in different colors, and lots of different colors. I mean, interior and exterior being different and competing against each other. And as what's going to happen with the complementaries, I'm not really sure. I'm not sure if how the form is going to change. They might become more sculpted, like the ones against the wall, but I see that I still love working with this interior form, this connection. Yeah, I want to do something with some really vibrant colors that really fight against each other. Yeah, that's the next thing.
That's great. Well, great. Well, thank you so much, Dan, for sharing all this, all your inspiration. It's really interesting to see the way you use photography and all the places that you draw from, and sharing some of the technical aspects of it with us is really interesting. I'm sure Nancy learned a lot in going to the studio and working with you and making these pieces together. So Dan and Nancy's show together is up in Dodge House Gallery at the Art Club, and we are open for one more day of the show. We're open tomorrow from noon until 4 p.m. So I hope you will come by and see this work in person. If you have the chance, we would like to see you there. And the pieces are also available to view online. You can see them at our website at providenceartclub.org. But if you do have a chance tomorrow, definitely stop by. And then we will make this video available. So if you joined us a little bit late, or if any of you had to leave early or anything, we'll have this video available for all of you. So thanks again for joining us, and thank you, Dan. Great presentation, really interesting.
Thanks.
And have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, Michael.
Again. Bye. Have a good night, everybody.
It was a really interesting experience.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. Thanks for all you've done.
No problem.
And I'm going to try to come in maybe I'll try to get in for lunch or something tomorrow, but I'll be around.
That sounds good. Thanks, Dan.
And I have some more packing materials and stuff like that, but what time do you plan on starting to bring it down?
4 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah. Have a good night.
Thanks.